Watch Dr. Drew's new show at 9 on HLN. Weeknights on HLN.
There's more evidence today. Another bug expert takes the stand, this gentleman you just saw. He says the insects found in Casey's car do not prove a dead body was in the trunk. I want to break down these facts. Coffin flies, cans filled with what's being called death air, more on chloroform hair. What does this all mean? Is there enough physical evidence to sentence Casey Anthony to death? Joining me now is medical examiner Daniel Spitz, and still with me is former prosecutor Lonnie Coombs. She's back on the set with me. Dr. Spitz, could a certain type of bug prove a dead body was in that car?
No, I don't think a certain type of bug could make that proof. But it's not just that. It's the totality of the evidence. And we have more than just bugs. We have the smell that's been associated with this. We have the chloroform. So while we heard 8 hours of testimony about bugs today, that is just one piece of the puzzle. It certainly doesn't tell the whole story.
And Lonnie, I want to ask you something. That guy, the entomologist, was on the stand again. The one for the prosecution, like, cut through to me. I mean, somehow his testimony was like moving. Yeah. This guy I didn't buy, and the prosecution said he wasn't qualified or had never done court testimony before, expert witness testimony.
Right.
Sometimes that's a good thing because some of these guys are hired hands, right? They're hired
right.
guns.
That's
So this guy is sort of a novice.
Yes.
That could cut either way.
It can cut it either way, and it's amazing how much the jury actually looks at that. You know, attorneys sometimes get caught up in here are the facts, and that's all it is. And jurors are looking and saying, do I believe this guy? Does he carry the weight of wisdom and experience for me to believe him? Or am I thinking maybe that lack of experience is carrying over to his opinion?
Or is he just a hired gun that's getting paid and saying whatever the prosecution wants him to say? It happens a lot
The
in
ones
courtrooms.
who sit back and look so slick and polished, you're like, oh, he's just going to say whatever the script says,
It's
right?
stunning to me, you know, as a medical person watching some testimony that is just outlandish, and people say it with great conviction in a courtroom. Dr. Spitz, I have a question about the hair. All right, if Casey was drugging Kaylee, wouldn't the hair be a source of information about what my theory, Xanax or chloroform? Wouldn't that be a possibility?
It would. The hair could be tested, and it would be more indicative of a chronic exposure. If this was a one-time thing, then you wouldn't expect the hair to show any type of value in regards to the testing for Xanax or anything else, really. So hair testing is good for chronic exposures to certain drugs, but it wouldn't tell you much about an acute exposure.
Well, it's my theory is that Zanny the nanny was, I don't know, but my little pet theory is that Zanny the nanny may have been Xanax that she was using to sedate the child a little bit, and that's an expensive medication that when she ran out of money switched over to chloroform, which she could manufacture for pennies. Did anybody test for this stuff, do you think? Dr. Spitz?
Oh, you know, I don't think they did testing for it, unfortunately. I think it could have potentially answered some questions. But again, if she's being given Xanax over a long period of time, you would expect it to be identified in the hair samples. But if this was a one-time thing with Xanax or chloroform exposure, it really wouldn't answer any question about whether it was used.
All right, Lonnie, why in the world did they not test? Come on.
Yeah, well, I
That's
don't know.
ridiculous to me. That's absurd. They should have tested.
They should have tested. Anytime they develop somewhat of a theory, for example, when they asked that the paternity test be done, that doesn't necessarily mean that investigators think there was some sexual abuse. They're just wiping out all the possibilities,
yes.
And that's what they should have done with that test. But there's something else that your audience needs to remember about scientific evidence. You know, we've all been raised on CSI, and we see, oh, here's the answer, and it's black and white, and this means he's guilty. Scientific evidence isn't like that. When we see this back and forth, well, it could be, and it could mean this, but it could also mean that. That's the reality of scientific evidence like this, physical evidence that the jury gets. And so they still have to weigh what they believe to be true, which expert they trust.
I don't know if they found evidence of alprazolam, which is Xanax, in this child's hair. There's no other reason she should be exposed to that than somebody handing it to her.
That's
You know what I'm saying?
right.
It's not a pediatric medication, typically.
But even if it wasn't there, doesn't mean that she wasn't being given it, because maybe it just didn't show up in the hair like he was saying.
Okay.
So.
All right, Dr. Spitz, let me ask you this. What should they be looking for in that trunk?
Well, obviously anything to indicate that a deceased individual was there. And decompositional fluids, any type of biomaterial, certainly bugs, which would indicate that there was decomposition going on.